Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. The time has come. I knew I said that I was going to do kind of a response video on whatever they put out once they made announcements that, they were going to go into more into like, changing the things, all that they said. I definitely wanted to, just make a follow-up video and talk about, those things and give my opinion, my stance on all the new kind of stuff that came out. And now we're here. Just to be clear, I'm Andrew, and I am the programmer, the lead programmer on a game called Below the Stone, developed by Stroll Art Studios. I'm basically, one of the founders of Below the Stone and Stroll Art. And, being with that being said, the game really just started being made in Unity, and this was like basically my first big project in Unity. And we started off in 2018 thinking like, okay, yeah, this is a really great thing to use, a really great tool for us to use because it's extremely accessible. And not only that, but it gives you a lot of granular control, right? With a language like C Sharp, it's basically like Java. And at least from my opinion and position, C Sharp is like Java but better, right? Because it has a lot of things that Java never really had. And so, uh, it's just like Unity has that, and you can use that to make whatever you want. Of course, it's not as good as C++, but that's a different subject for a different video. So here we are. Um, I've already been kind of going through looking for a lot of different places where information is being put out, kind of like with the previous video, where there's the blog post, and then there's a lot of other places where info is being put out. There's also an FAQ section down here. Actually, I didn't read the FAQ, which might actually be good thing to go through. I don't want this video to be an hour long. Hopefully, it's not. But then there's also this open letter to this is this, but they tweeted about it, and then people are saying a lot of things down here about it and all that kind of stuff. And I also watched this video. So if you're gonna watch another video and get a more detailed walkthrough of what's been going on, I would recommend watching the Games from Scratch, their video that they put out on this. And they've been making tons of other uh, videos on just this whole Unity negative event that has popped up. But there's a lot that I want to say about this. And before I get into actually, I don't want to. I want to skim through this as much as possible, but there are some things that I do want to say personally, and some of those things people might agree with, and some of those things might be things that other developers or other people might not agree with necessarily. But the one thing that I want to say is that considering that Below the Stone is being developed in Unity, we rely on Unity to be able to upkeep their own software, fix bugs, put out updates, and just make the engine better overall, right? To upkeep it. And for whatever reason, it seems like this is a pattern with a lot of large companies that they can't seem to be transparent. Well, transparent, but they don't really seem to know how to communicate properly and have a proper dialogue with their customers and their community, which is something that, as an indie developer, something that I personally strive to be better to not do, to not make that same mistake, and to have an open dialogue with the community and say, what should we do, right? This isn't just a decision that should solely be based off of the people internally, but the people, the customers and the community themselves should also uh, have be a part of that conversation before the leaders just come out and say this is what we're going to do, right? Because then it creates all this kind of turmoil and angst and confusion and all those words and all that kind of stuff. But what I do want to say is that if Below the Stone is going to continue being developed in the future, I want it to be upkeep. And what I wanted to say was that it sounds like, and this is what I feel like they should have just been more clear about, which is that they're not breaking even when it comes to their expenses and their revenues and how much Unity's making from whatever revenue sources like Unity Pro and things like that. And I'm only saying that because I remember seeing videos and pictures of people showing like, oh, here's, they're basically breaking even and, showing that they're not doing so well. And that's obviously why this is happening, why there's these prices changes are happening. I mean, if you look at like say Unreal Engine, how they have revenue share, which I didn't really know they had. I knew they had a pricing scheme. I just didn't know the full details of it. But that just goes to show you that like they're probably doing a lot better off because they have revenue share. So, they're able to afford to have more people working on their engine and doing updates and maintaining and bug fixing and things like that. Um, yeah. So, like, with all that buildup, the first thing I wanted to say is like, if this is going to help them to just continue to maintain Unity engine and fix bugs and debloat it a little bit, optimize it, and just continue to have, to be, well, to use their words or the words that everyone's using, sustainable, right? If it's going to allow Unity to be more sustainable, then I think that's good, right? Of course, we don't know how exactly they're spending their money, if they're doing it wisely or not. They had layoffs, like the last big negative news involved layoffs and stuff like that, which are not good. And so it really also comes down to, how wisely are they spending their money? Are they, focusing their own resources in the right places and stuff like that? I have no idea. Uh, I'm just, one person kind of giving my one specific perspective on this whole issue. But all in all, just before we get into this, the one thing that I want to say is like, I'm okay with personally, I'm okay with them with this kind of like revenue based thing. It's just that it needs to be fair and not have too many like weird, like you can't be asking a bajillion different questions about how it works. Like you should know how it works, and it shouldn't be adding in these totally unnecessary corporate vibe feeling things that just don't feel right at all. Like in the last video, I talked about just the concerns that you could make a single player game, and depending on how they do it, because of course there were so many open questions, depending on how you do it, they could be, uh, putting in some software that requires you to, the game to be connected to the internet or something like that, even if it's a purely single player game, which is kind of moving in the same direction as a lot of other technologies moving in, where even if something doesn't need the internet, it's basically being designed to require internet, or else you can't use it. It's unusable unless you have an internet connection and you have an account with the company who made the software, right? And that you remember that password and log in and all that kind of BS. Uh, which is like everyone knows now that like because it's only a new thing, right? You don't need, you know, to have internet connection to use certain software. You don't need an internet connection to use a computer, period, right? But yeah. Um with that being said, let's just get into this. I think there's gonna be more that like I'm gonna be saying as we go here, just kind of rambling. Hopefully not too long, but yeah. So to kind of go down here, there's a lot of important things that are being said here. I recommend you read this in your own time. But the first big thing is it says our Unity personal plan will remain free, and there will be no runtime fee for games built in Unity Personal. So I think this is a really great thing to hear. But the thing is in some people are probably going to be shaming me for saying this. But even in Unity Personal, like as long as the numbers are fair, like if I'm using Unity Personal, and maybe there's a detail I'm missing here, but if I'm using Unity Personal, right, it wouldn't be very good for them to just not have a runtime fee for even for Unity Personal, because then everyone could just use Unity Personal, especially considering this stuff I haven't gotten to yet, and then because you could just use it and then not have to worry about the fee, and people would just do that. But if they're now kind of going back a bit and saying, all right, you use Unity Personal, because then they say here, we will be increasing the cap from 100K to 200K, and we will remove the requirement to use the Made with Unity splash screen, which is really awesome. That's a really big, awesome thing. Um, and it's one of those things that like it's really cool to see that they're doing that, and at the same time, it makes me kind of rethink the Unity splash screen. I don't want to rethink it too quickly, but like I've heard that people in the Godot community, because there's no required splash screen, uh, people will actually make their own. Right? There's a different like the what's the right word? I don't know if connotation is the right word, but the kind of feeling that you get, the kind of vibe you get when you see the Unity logo splash screen versus seeing the Godot splash screen, if that's a thing, right? It's different because the only time people will ever see the Unity splash screen is when you're using Unity Personal, and most, as people will say, there's a lot of Unity games that are made that are very low quality. They're very, and because of that, it's, I think stigma was the word I was looking for. Maybe stigma isn't the right word, but it basically sets a precedent, a kind of mental precedent that like when you see the Unity logo before a game starts, that's usually a precursor to tell you the level of quality that you're about to be delivered, which is interesting because right now when you launch the Below the Stone demo that's currently on Steam, uh, um, you will probably, I'm pretty sure you'll see the splash screen, and I say pretty sure because uh, sometimes for whatever reason you'll just get like the blank kind of desaturated blue screen, and you won't see the logo for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Like sometimes it won't, like you won't actually see it, and I think it's just a bug. But it should show up because we haven't used anything other than personal. Um, but it's ironic considering people might see that logo, but then like and that might set some sort of expectation for the game, but then they play the game and it's like, oh wow, this is like, this Below the Stone game is like amazing. And it's kind of weird that it has this, it kind of defies the assumption of what you're expecting when you uh, when you see the Unity logo splash screen, you know. Um, and in reality, it might be actually, better if people's notion, the idea in their mind when they see the splash screen becomes more positive, right? In the same way that Godot's logo has that same kind of like people actually love showing it rather than not liking to show it, right? People in Unity, it's like you don't want to show it because you're being forced to show it. But with Godot, people actually want to show it and to kind of show that, hey, our game is made in Godot as kind of like a badge of pride, like, Godot's a good engine, right? So it would be nice to see with this, it would be nice to see people actually showing the Unity splash screen or making their own custom version to kind of show a kind of badge of pride, if you will. But I know saying that is really weird with all the current stuff happening, and it's probably going to take some time. It's going to take some time to kind of mend a lot of the stuff that's going on. And I'll say this that, like, even for us, the chances that we're going to make another game, like a separate game outside of Below the Stone in Unity is very low. Like, we're probably not going to do it. In my opinion, as a programmer, I would like to also learn other engines, right? Rather than being solely dependent on Unity and being able to kind of learn more, stretch, and kind of reach into other places. One thing I would personally like to do is just try to make my own engine, or I don't think the terminology is very solid when it comes to talking about this kind of stuff, but using libraries, right? So I'd be using other, open source libraries, that are the licenses are allowable for doing these types of things. Um, but using libraries that are available to build an engine from scratch and kind of take that where you go, and it's your engine, so it's yours. You don't have to worry about Unity and their kind of and all their crap and all that kind of stuff. And in all honesty, just this just popped off the top of my head, but like, with these pricing changes, it's going to change how people think about, is it worth moving from, porting a game from Unity to, let's say Godot, right? Because if the amount that they're taking is smaller now, right? If we even like whatever fee that we end up like in the future when we make enough money to actually have to pay this fee, um, if the amount we make is like whatever amount that we're paying, right? It's going to be smaller, I'm assuming now. And so whatever amount that we would be paying, because it's smaller, it means that the trade-off between going from porting the game from Unity to something else is going to be more difficult to justify that, because you have to think, how much time and money would it take to go from uh, porting a game from Unity to Godot or to Unreal or something like. Even though Unreal I don't think has a really good 2D support, and so a game like Below the Stone wouldn't make any sense. Or just porting our game to really any other engine, you know, because we would be paying a smaller fee, it's less worth it, right? If we were paying like ridiculous amounts, it would be worth it. But at this point, it won't be, which sounds bad. But at the same time, like I was saying before, you know, I like Unity, right? I still don't like what, a lot of what Unity has done, and that has made a definite negative impact on us. And because of that, we might not use it for another future project. But, but at the same time, I still want to see Unity not go away completely, because I also think that Unity is a really good tool for prototyping. If you're going to make a game and you're not sure what engine you want to make it in yet, you can still use Unity to prototype. You can use the free version to just make a concept, and that's it. You don't have to sell it. It can just be a concept. And then the game you eventually make can be written in C++ or could be written somewhere else. You don't necessarily need to, uh, like if there's some other engine you want to use, but it costs money to use it, you can just start by working on it in Unity, and then when you're ready to move over, you can port all your work if it's trivial, or even if it isn't, do it anyway if it actually is economically sensible. Move all that code over to this other hypothetical engine, and then start paying in there. And by the time you start paying, the game is already like 80% done, and then you can start selling it immediately. And so it makes as a good way to kind of move from the one place to the other. uh, Unity has a lot of different things you can do, right? It has built-in stuff for working with webcams. If you want to do webcam stuff, you can do shader coding. You can do, it's C sharp, so it's a really nice way to kind of get into programming. It has a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of important fundamental programming principles. Of course, it's not the same as C++. I think C++ has a lot of important programming principles that you get to learn while using it as well. But yeah, that's another discussion for a different video. Um, but yeah, there's just so much that it can do, and because of that, I would not want to see that Unity just dies. But at the same time, I think they do still need to do a lot of work to kind of mend their uh, all the kind of mess ups, all the screw ups that they just made in this past week. But yeah, moving on. So yeah, our Unity. Okay, so let me reread this. Our Unity Personal plan will remain free, and there will be no runtime fee for games in Unity Personal. So my assumption here is that they're kind of rolling back a bit and saying, if you're using Personal and you make a certain amount of money per year, then you're obligated to move to Unity Pro or something like that. And so, with that being said, sorry, taking a drink. With that being said, uh, there will be when you go to Pro, then that's when the fee will actually kick in. That in Personal you have no fee, but of course once you make over a certain amount, you go to Pro and then you have the fee or something like that. But if you're already using Pro, there's still a cap. I don't know. Like there's a lot. I think they're addressing a lot of things, but they don't go into enough detail. So that's largely an assumption, because I would think that it would be weird if Unity Personal people didn't pay a fee at all, because you're still technically using the engine, and people are probably saying, "Don't say that, don't say that." Don't you want that? Well, like, don't you want to not pay any money on Unity Personal? Like, well, yeah, that'd be nice, but that's like, if a grocery store just started saying, "Oh, here, you can take all of our stuff for free," right? That's nice, but they're not going to be able to do that forever. They'll lose money, and then they'll go out of business, right? Which isn't a great way to run a business. So, you know, if they, are trying to stay afloat and have, do more than just break even so that they can, you know, have some extra to kind of reinvest into improving technology and stuff like that, improving, all that they're doing with Unity Engine, then that's what that I would think it would make sense that there would be like a fee, but it should be fair. It should be something like, it should be something close to like rev share of Unreal Engine, essentially. But yeah. So, and then of course they say we will be increasing the cap from 100K to 200K, which is confusing. And I should bring up that other blog post if it's still uh, actually up. I don't know if it's actually still up. Um, I think this is it because, and the reason why, yeah, this is okay, yeah. And the editor's note, we have updated blah blah blah. I wonder if they actually updated this page. I hope not because I need to compare. It's ironic because I did actually save this page, uh, like as a HTML, a separate HTML document. In the event that they edited this page and then didn't really announce it to try to like backtrack or something, but it looks like they're being more transparent and they're saying like they're making updates, but I don't know if they updated this page. Uh, so yeah, I'm not gonna read this, but they're just making little head notes or footnotes or whatever you call them. But the confusing bit is just that for here they're talking about 200K USD, so they're already talking about this, right? This kind of like threshold, revenue threshold. But on here, they're saying we're increasing the cap from 100K to 200K and move the requirement to use made with Unity splash screen. So my question is like, is this referring to, like the original, like if you're using Unity Personal and you make over 100K that you're obligated to use Unity Pro or something like that? Is that what that is? I have no idea. I'm honestly not sure. Or if this is specifically because it's like 200K, that's the number that's always been there, so it's kind of confusing. I'm assuming that's but yeah, hopefully you get what I mean. And if anyone can clarify this in the comments, that would be great. Because again, I don't think they're going into a lot of detail here. Anyway, moving on. No game with less than 1 million in trailing 12-month revenue will be subject to a fee. So this sounds good, although using words like trailing, I have to kind of process it and say like, well, what exactly do you mean by that? No game with less than $1 million in trailing 12-month revenue will be subject to trailing fees. So when I hear trailing, I think to myself, the previous 12 months. So this is actually something that I was saying in the original video, that this fee should only be based off of, like, it shouldn't be a flag that goes up and then stays up forever for the life of your game. It should be something that goes up and then it changes based off of a yearly basis. And that's what it sounds like what they're saying here. No game with less than 1 million in trailing 12 months. So if you've made over $1 million in the last 12 months, in the previous 12 months, you will be subject to a fee. So if you make less than 1 million, you will not be subject to a fee. Okay. Which sounds great, right? Because again, if people are installing your game, like you release a game now and it's people are still installing it 10 years from now, you shouldn't be like charged for those installs, especially considering that install might be due to a purchase that happened 10 years ago in that future point in time. And if that person eventually installs a game a certain amount of times, you will be charged for an amount that is equal or greater to the amount that person paid, therefore meaning that you've now lost all that money that went into that single purchase, right? If someone buys a game for $20 and so then you receive as a developer, ignoring all the other fees that like Steam and other people might take from you for whatever reason, assuming those don't exist, developer receives $20. Player installs the game over their lifetime 20 or 100 times, let's say, if they eventually reach that point. Then what that means is that eventually you will be charged an amount of money which is equivalent to the amount of that you made, which means that you completely lost it. You've completely lost that money, which is bad considering that, as a developer, you're going to be spending that $20 updating your game and doing all these other things. So it's completely nonsensical. And so the fact that they're changing this and making it, in reference to, well, actually, this is about, well, here, yeah, they're saying revenue. So if you make over $1 million in revenue in the past 12 months, or at least I think that's what they're saying, I'm pretty confident in that that's what they're saying here. And if that's not what they're saying, again, I'd like for anyone in the comments to kind of clarify uh, that and make sure I'm getting this right. But that sounds like what they're saying, right? So 10 years from now, the revenue of a game might be smaller depending on what kind of game you're making. If it's just a game where there's no microtransactions and it's just a single one-time purchase, then yeah, uh, the revenue might be very small once everyone has purchased your game. And so your revenue might be less than $1 million. And so you obviously shouldn't be charged at that point. So, reading this is good. I'm really happy with reading this. And then also after that, so we have for those creators on Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise, we're also making changes based on your feedback. Okay, and then it says the runtime fee policy will only apply beginning with the next LTS version of Unity shipping in 2024, which is also really nice to hear. For Below the Stone, I think we eventually do need to update to another LTS version. I believe we're on 2021 right now. Actually, really? Are we? I don't want to. Actually, let me check right now, quick. Yeah, so we are using 2021. I'm not sure if it's the LTS version of Unity. I think it is. But we do plan on updating to a newer LTS version. It doesn't have to be 2024 yet. So it's really, really, it's really nice to see that there's a bit of a buffer for us until this even applies to us. This is going to be really good for us, for Stroll Art and Below the Stone, because this is, again, the first game we're releasing, right? We don't have much funding right now. We have a good amount of funding, but it's only enough that we have to be very careful how and where we spend it. And so it's not like we have money to throw around and kind of really, like, we can't go into full gear, let's just say, right? Um, so yeah, hearing this is really nice. And then it also says your games that are currently shipped and the projects you are currently working on will not be included, which is also really great to hear, unless you choose to upgrade them to this new version of Unity. And even then, I would assume, based off of this logic, that it only applies to builds of the game using that version. So if you are, like say like Rust, for example, right? That's the one thing. That's the one that comes to mind because Rust has been out for a very long time and it's probably been through various versions of Unity. And so, and even the Gary Newman, the person who made Gary's mod, also the person who is the owner of Face Punch Studios, which is the people behind Gary's mod and Rust, basically had a lot of negative things to say about all this kind of stuff. And so, looking at Rust, for example, you know, their game, their current builds of the game that people are playing right now should obviously not be included in this entire thing because of the fact that those builds of the game were made with different understood terms. You shouldn't be charged for a build of the game that you had no idea these terms were going to be a thing, right? So again, that's just a repetition of everything everyone's been talking about with this whole Unity uh, stuff that's been going on. So uh, yeah, good to hear that they are realizing that's not a good idea and that they should only be charging the versions of the game that are that are new, that are kind of in line with these changes. Then they say we will make sure that you can stay on in. Let me start over. We will make sure that you can stay on the terms applicable for the version of Unity editor you are using, as long as you keep using that version, which is a repetition of what they just said previously. So, uh, if you're using a previous version of Unity, then the terms that apply to that one are those are the ones they are what they are, right? So if we stay on 2021 version of Unity, then this doesn't even apply to us. Uh, it's not going to apply to us forever because, of course, we're probably going to update below the stone to a newer version of Unity in the future because the current one has, its fair share of weird bugs and weird issues and here and there, and some of them might be related to our own code. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes, but with that being said, we're just hoping that like newer versions of Unity are just going to be better overall, especially if they're going to be getting more funding through these changes, and that will mean that they can actually afford to have to keep their developers and have them actually fix a lot of issues and just make things better overall. That would be really nice to kind of see. Hopefully, Unity bounce back. Who knows, right? Um, I'm the type of person that I've seen a lot of different large companies go through a lot of BS. I'm trying not to curse a lot, even though I know people probably don't care that much. Um, but I've seen a lot of different companies from like Microsoft to Apple to uh, Google to Facebook to, Amazon, I guess. Amazon, not as much, but I know Amazon has had its fair share of controversy and doing stupid things. But with all of that being said, I have a kind of negative lens automatically with a lot of these companies. And so it's like I'm of this opinion that, if a tech company is publicly traded, chances are it's going to start doing things that its customers and users are just not going to like because that's just how things go, right? And ever since Unity became publicly traded, that just kind of was a disconcerting thing, and made me kind of worried. So there's a good chance that this isn't the end of the bad stuff happening to Unity, and this just could be a pattern. And it's good that this is happening, that there's actually like a resolution and that Unity's listening. It's something that you don't get that often from other companies like Apple or Microsoft, where they're actually listening to their consumers. And that could be because their consumers don't outcry enough or something else. I don't know. I think that's the big difference, right? A lot of Unity's consumers are people who are programmers and developers and people who are a different type of person who is just a lot more likely to complain. But if you look at the average customer of, say, Microsoft, you have to really think about it for a minute. Who truly is the average consumer of like Microsoft's products? It really can't be gamers. It can't be, even though that might be weird to say, considering Windows 10 especially has had a lot of special care towards gaming, or at least in the marketing side of it. Um, it seemed like there was a lot of special care put towards making it for gamers, even though, yeah, like I said, it was probably just a marketing thing. But you know, I honestly still think that like their biggest customer is still just people who aren't gamers, just other people, whether it just be other companies or uh, average Joe individuals that are kind of sensible enough to say, what's the point in spending $2,000 on a shiny box with an app with a picture of an apple on the back when I could, if I need to, you know, fill out a form on my government on this government website you know, just to do this thing because I can't do it by mail anymore because we got to use the internet for everything now for some stupid reason. And so they're going to buy like the cheapest possible hardware, which is going to be like the $300 laptop and or $200 laptop, and it's going to have it's going to have Windows 11 on it, right? And the only way to use it, you have to do all this other stuff. So they're doing it because the outcrying is only coming from a small fraction of their consumers, and they know that, and so they can get away with it. But Unity can't because what towards Microsoft might be a small percentage of their consumers is pretty much 90% of Unity, right? All of the gamers and the nerds and the people who actually put more brain power into looking into these types of things, that might only constitute a small percentage of Microsoft's consumers, but for Unity, it's like basically all of them. So they can't get away with this kind of stuff because their consumers actually are more in tune uh, with the companies and the products and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, with that aside, let's move on. So for games that are subject to a runtime fee, uh, we are giving you a choice of either, and I like to hear that. I like hearing the word choice, um, but it's a bit confusing because it says we're giving you a choice of either a 2.5 revenue share, which is really nice because apparently uh, Unreal's is 5%. So the choice of either 5% revenue share or the calculated amount based on the number of new people engaging with your game each month. So the idea is that I think the idea is that if you don't report, because this is part of it, I don't know if I've read that part yet, but if you don't report your, uh, what is it? If you don't report your installs, then they're just going to do 2.5 revenue share, or at least that's what it sounds like. I think they're saying a lot of nice things, but they're not laid out super well so that we can get a sense of how it all is going to work. But they're saying a lot of things that are really nice. Like just them saying revenue share is a large relief. It being 2.5 is also really nice because it's smaller than Unreal Engines apparently. Um, and also they're using the word choice. So we're giving you a choice that you can do this or the calculated amount based on the number of new people engaging with your game each month. It's kind of weird that they're using the word engaging. Like, don't you mean installs? I don't know what, like, why. It's kind of confusing. Calculated amount based on the number of new people engaging with your game each month. I'm kind of confused by that bit, right? But then they say both of these numbers are self-reported, which oh yeah, that's the part that I was meaning to lead up to, which is like there's actually something I want to say about this, but I want to kind of continue and finish this and then say it after. But so they're saying both of these numbers are self-reported from data you already have available. So I think what they're saying is that we have to report our revenue, number one, and we have to uh, uh, report engagement. And so what that means is that and what it'll mean is that the amount that we pay will be smaller. So it'll be the calculated amount based on the number of new people engaging with your game each month. So basically what they're saying is whichever one is smaller, whichever one is uh, a lesser amount, and that's this part. You will always be billed a lesser amount. So they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, I suppose, and whether or not 2.5% of your revenue is smaller or whether or not this is smaller, they'll bill you based off of that, which is quite nice. To kind of know that they're doing something like that, because of course, again, like I was saying in the previous video, you could be, um, selling a game for $1, and so chances are a 2.5 revenue share, if you're selling your game for $1, is going to be better than, uh, going for something like a install based fee, right? Being charged per install is with a fixed amount per install is not good. It's worse for you if you're selling your game for $1, and it would be better for you to have a 2.5 revenue share at that point. So that's good for those kind of situations. Then they say we want to continue to build the best engine for creators. We truly love this industry, and you are the reason why. And this video is over by now. I checked. It's like it's a VOD. So if you click on this, it'll be a video by Jason Wyman and the person who made this, Mark Whitten. So they, basically talked. I didn't watch the whole video, but they, were kind of talking, and basically Mark Whitten was answering questions. So there's probably a lot of info in that video. If you want to get more info, it might be good to watch that video. It's quite long, but if you want to watch it, It's worth watching. And here are some more details. I'm going to click on that. I think I know what this is. Yeah, okay, I already have this page open. But yeah, what I would like to see is a much more thorough breakdown of all that's going to be happening, right? So that for us, for Below the Stone, we can go, like with this schedule, you can actually very easily say, like, you know, for Below the Stone, if we made this amount of money and this many installs, you can very easily calculate how much you'd have to pay, right? So this graph made it easy to do that, but it also meant that like the results you were seeing weren't that great, along with a lot of the other things they were saying. Where here, they're saying a lot of nice things here as well, and clarifying a lot of stuff because uh, it's just we needed to hear a lot of this kind of stuff. We needed this resolution and them kind of fixing a lot of this just confusion and whatever. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done here. Like they're saying a lot of things that I hear them and I go, "Oh, this is nice. I'm really glad they're doing this." But but you know, I think the painting still needs to be painted, right? The painting is not complete. I'm still left asking myself, how would this work for Unity, right? Uh, if if we make like $300,000 in our first year of development and we're only using Unity Personal, does this mean that the fee applies to us? Which is weird because you're saying here that there will be no runtime fee for games built in Unity Personal. You're saying that. So if we make tons of money, the fee still doesn't apply to us. But you're saying we'll be increasing the cap from this to this. So I'm assuming that what that means is that if we make that amount of money, we have to move to Pro, which it is what it is, right? I think there's some nice things you get from Pro anyway, but that's what that is, right? The big thing though is that they're removing the splash screen. I think that's really big. That's a really nice thing that they're doing. It's a very simple thing, right? And the only reason why you'd be happy that they would be doing away with that is because you kind of get dragged down with this stigma that this game is made with Unity, it's probably bad, right? And hiding that and not being required to show that can be nice. So yeah, with that being said, those are really nice things. Of course, this is not going to apply to the current version of Unity. This is probably going to only apply in the newer versions. So you'd have to upgrade to those versions to get this nice little change. But yeah, so with all that being said, what else did I want to say? I think this is the one thing I wanted to say, and some people obviously, I want to hear what people have to say about this, but I actually like reading a lot of this kind of made me think about certain things. But I think like the way this is written, like I said, there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret what this actually means for how things are actually going to work when we get to that point. But this whole bit about we're giving you a choice of either 2.5 rev share or the calculated amount based on the number of new people engaging, installing your game, whatever this means, engaging. Both of these are self-reported from data you already have available. So when I read this, I immediately asked myself, what happens if people don't report? This is an important question. What if people don't report? What do you have an idea of what's going to happen if that occurs? And maybe this is said somewhere. Maybe in this video that question is mentioned. Maybe it's addressed. And if it is, it would be nice if someone left a comment and answered that question in the comment section of this video, because I don't want to spend a lot, even though I got to be real with you here. I'd rather focus on just working on Below the Stone because a lot of people are really hyped for this game, and I don't want to continue to put off days trying to do research on this when I can just get a cursory kind of general idea of what's going on. And I know I'm making a video, and I know it's probably going on an hour now, but uh, this is the quickest way I could possibly just kind of put my opinion out there, so other developers can kind of hear the opinion of other developers and get it kind of in full detail. So I wanted to do this, not just to be a part of the whole thing, the whole upbringing and of YouTube videos being posted and all that kind of stuff. I just wanted to give my opinion and share it with other people, so you're not just stuck with your own opinion. You know what the opinion of other people are, so you can kind of get an idea, the sense of where Unity developers are with this kind of stuff. Um, but anyway, yeah, like what's going to happen if you don't report, or what if you false report, right? It's kind of like taxes. Going back to the taxes thing, where if you don't report your numbers honestly, will Unity be able to go, we detected that you're not reporting honestly? And it's this kind of irony of, people will say with like US taxes, why do you have to do your own taxes if the government already knows how much you owe, right? Which, not to go off topic, but I have a feeling there's probably a lot of misconceptions with that, uh, like, there's probably more to that. I don't know. Not going into that, but like, if Unity has no idea how to tell what your data is. Like if Unity has no idea what your revenue is, they have no way of telling your revenue or telling what your installs are, then you could technically say whatever you want. But if they do have a way of telling, then you could say, well, why not? Why don't they just do it themselves? And that's an important question to kind of ponder on and then think, there's probably a reason, but I don't know. I have no idea. But with that being said, this kind of made me think about something that I remember reading on a web page that I have here in my tabs, and I'll show you in a minute. But this is kind of me looking at this from the optimistic perspective, from the glass half full perspective, that you could literally report whatever you want. You could report nothing, or you could report something, and then they'll charge you based off of it. So they're relying on us to give that information, right? But if they're not going to use the word audit, if they're not going to actually check and make sure that we're being honest with the revenue and the installs that we report, I mean, I'm pretty sure they can figure out the revenue data pretty easily. Like, I'm pretty sure they can do that. It's a lot easier for them to kind of figure out that information if Unreal Engine is already doing that. And so, excuse me. So, that's, I think, what's probably happening is that, if you don't report, they'll just look for your revenue share and charge you accordingly. So if you don't report, you get more, you get charged more. But if you do report, you get a discount or something like that, um, which also sounds okay. But reading this, I kind of thought to myself, this sounds like something that I learned recently, learned about a thing that someone conceptualized, which is a thing called honesty ware. And to explain honesty ware, I need to bring up this page. So this is where I first read it. And other people who have heard of honesty ware are probably going to say this is not honesty ware, and I would agree with you. What I'm saying is I'm making a comparison about a certain idea that's being put forward in this page about honesty ware. And if you're curious what this page is, let's see if I can. Yeah, I'm gonna bring up. Hold on a second. So this is the name of the website, diffuse.ca. It's just some person's website. It has a lot of different cool things on it for like programmers and stuff like this. But it has this one page where they're just talking about this thing, this concept. And so if you want to read about it, this is the website, um, and the actual page itself. So honesty, where they're saying, is a philosophy for selling software and other digital content that lets the consumer decide whether the software is worth paying for. So in fact, itch.io does this, where when you go to download something, I believe you can charge a certain amount for it. Like you can charge like, oh, we want this amount. Um, but there's also a mode that you can choose where you can say, pay the amount you want to pay. So if you want to pay $20 or if you want to pay 30, so it's like a donation, but it's like the way it's presented to the end user is different. Where instead of it being, oh, free download, you click a button and that's it. It's you click the button and you're presented with a window that basically says you could pay whatever amount you want. So you could pay $0 or you could pay $20. And so it kind of presents a very fair moral dilemma that you could just enter the number 0, but other people might be like, this software is worth my time. I'm going to enter $20 or I'm going to enter 30. So people could literally pay whatever amount they want for the software, and there you go, right? And I think that's part of what this is saying. The philosophy of selling software and other digital content that lets the consumer decide whether the software is worth paying for and how much the software is worth. It is based on the assumption and my strong belief, not me, but the person writing this, that people will pay for things that are worth paying for. And I think this is a very interesting concept, and it puts a lot of trust in the consumer to pay that amount. But considering this is software and not physical products, it works better, right? Even in the real world, there are situations where, they're not common, but there's situations where, or at least stories that I've heard of, where people will, have a kind of a food stand, right, in some like place, like I don't know if it was Italy or Spain or something like that, where there would be like an outdoor farm stand type of thing or setup where different people would sell their own stuff that they've made, farmed and grown and stuff like that. And some of the stands will have nobody at them, and they'll basically say, all right, uh, it's up to the consumer to be honest about paying for the things, right? If the apple is worth us $2, I'm just throwing a number out there, saying apple is worth $2, then you're relying on the consumer, the customer, to be honest about the purchase, and that they would put $2 in the bucket or whatever, or in the box, or paying for their uh, product accordingly, which doesn't always work in every single situation in every corner of the world, but in some cases it works out, right? You might be thinking, well, this is the internet, right? There's no shame, right? People don't have shame on the internet. People will say things that they wouldn't say in the real world. So take that into consideration and apply this to HonestyWare and think, well, there's probably tons of people who would pay nothing, right? But then you also have to ask yourself how many people would actually pay something, right? Those people that do have morals and actually would go, this deserves to be, I should be paying for this. And those people might pay an amount which compensates for the people who paid nothing. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Who knows? It depends, right? But if the thing that you're making is worth paying for, there you go. So that's basically what they're saying here. Software sold as HonestyWare can be downloaded free of charge, but if the user likes the software, they must pay for it. If the user doesn't like the software, they must delete it. Oh, this is the other thing. They must delete it from their system as a courtesy to the software developers. These rules are not enforced, so it's up to the user to be honest and obey them. That's why it's called HonestyWare, because the rules are not enforced. Software sold as HonestyWare is never encumbered by bloated DRM technologies or trial limitations. I truly believe that people will follow the rules and pay for good software even if they can get it for free. And I think this is a really, I like the concept of HonestyWare. And I think I like it because part of me is also can be a very optimistic person. There's times in my life where I can be very pessimistic, but most of the time I just prefer to be to be optimistically minded and think that, um, you know, that something like HonestyWare works. But it depends on the product. It depends on what it is. Not every piece of software should use HonestyWare. It just depends on what it is. More or less, HonestyWare is just the same thing as, or it's very similar, I should say, to freeware, to software that is just, uh, distributed for free. And then right next to the download button, there's a donation button, right? The difference is that, you're kind of making a statement that, you know, it's honestyware, and you're presenting this kind of you're much more clearly presenting this moral situation, this fair moral situation to the person buying your software, that you should not be using this software if you enjoy it and you're using it for free, that you should pay for it. Of course, you know, the one example people might bring up is like WinRAR, where tons of people use WinRAR for free. So why don't people pay for it? Right? Why don't, and I think it's because, you know, and I guess this could be something to be said against honestyware, because uh, just the tool of zipping and unzipping stuff, right, shouldn't have a price to it, right? Like with WinRAR, you can create zip files, you can create RAR files, .rar, right? And if you do that, if you create these RAR files, how do you open them, right? I'm pretty sure you can open them with other free software, but like that's kind of how it started with me when I first discovered WinRAR as a kid, right? Doing stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing or whatever. And people would always say, oh, you got to get WinRAR, right? Because this file is a RAR file, and in order to get the stuff inside the RAR file, you need to get WinRAR. And WinRAR is this thing that, you know, it's a trial, and once the trial's up, you have to pay for it, even though technically you're not stopped from using it. So it's kind of like honestyware in that sense. But nobody pays for it. Almost nobody pays for it, I think, because it's just the only reason they're using it is because they needed to unzip some file, right? That could have been, you know, zipped up with a .zip or a .7-zip or something, or it could have been zipped up with some other free software that exists, right? They could have used anything else, any other archiving software that exists that's free, but someone decided to zip up the file with RAR, and then put themselves in that situation where now the users have to unzip. They have to download WinRAR to unzip it, which is like, what's the point? Like, but I think we've gotten to a point where I'm pretty sure like 7-zip can open RAR files, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, there's still a point to be made with all of that. It's like technically it's honestyware, and it kind of plays against the whole idea of honestyware, because it's an example of how it's, you know, it doesn't always work in those types of situations. Things that are as trivial and as simple as file compressing with like a .zip, right? That shouldn't cost any money, because it's a very basic concept, right? You zip things because usually when you send things across the internet, you're just sending a single file, right? So you need to take an entire folder, zip it up into an archive to send it across the internet, right? It's purely exists for the sake of practicality, to be able to do something simple on a computer. Um, there's more stuff here. This just keeps going on, but that's what honestyware is. And so when I read this, it kind of sounds like that. I'm not saying Unity Engine is now honestyware, because it still costs a flat amount of money, but they're relying sort of, it sounds like, on an honesty system. They're relying on the consumers who use Unity to report the right information. Okay, so I hope that's how it's working, right? You know, like I said earlier, I would want to be honest with Unity if it ultimately meant that it's going to, that the money that the more money that they're asking for is going to ultimately help Unity to be better, and to, you know, make it run better, to debloat it, to, you know, add more awesome features and all this kind of stuff. Because that's again why we chose Unity in the first place, because I was in a position where, you know, we wanted to make a game, and it's a waste of time for us to have to learn all these new things, learn how to figure out how to do all these different programming systems, to program all these systems that Unity already has for us, physics, sound, all this kind of stuff. It would be faster for us to just use something that already does all that kind of stuff, right? And then deal with, you know, all of the different weird quirks of Unity, and just kind of deal with it as best as possible. So, yeah. And that's pretty much it. I will say that there's also this page. I don't think I'm going to go over it too much. They just kind of reiterate a lot of what's being said here, but then they also have, uh, a FAQ, which actually probably answers a lot of my questions. Um, so I might want to read some of this. But like here, there's a question: how do I report my data? Both revenue and initial engagements. So now they're calling it engagements, I guess, are self-reported. We will work with customers and partners to develop tools and proceed in processes to make this as easy as possible for customers. So it sounds like they don't have a way as of now, but they're totally willing to do that. Um, does installing the same game on multiple devices count towards the Unity runtime fee? Multiple devices, multiple device initial engagements, and they are indeed calling them engagements now. That's a good thing to point out. From the same distribution channel count as a single initial engagement. Initial engagements from separate distribution channels count separately. A bunch of terms. They could have said that much more simply. But yeah. Does installing and reinstalling a game count as two separate games? No. Okay, thank you. Who is charged? You may work with a publisher to publish a game, and Unity's terms support your ability to distribute through a publisher. It may be optimal to have your publisher connect with their Unity account manager in order for you and them to work with Unity on a mutually beneficial agreement. Okay. Oh, who is charged? I read that wrong. Uh, how does Unity estimate the runtime fee when I have not supplied data? Uh, while we always recommend you supply your own data, in the absence of that, we will use our own data from Unity services that you have agreed to integrate into your project and readily available external data. So that part is actually a bit concerning. Our own data from Unity services that you have agreed to integrate. So the fact that they're saying this, that you have agreed to integrate, like, just because someone, like, anyone should understand by now that when someone says, you have agreed to this, just because, like, what they mean when they say agree is like you checked a box, right? But that didn't mean that you were consciously aware of what you agreed on, right? So anyone who uses Unity probably agreed to certain things happening to their software, but so kind of that's actually a little bit concerning. So it, yeah, I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but for all you out there, read through these FAQ because it'll probably say some important things about uh, what their plans are as of now. Uh, initial engagement. Okay. So, okay. So, yeah. And like I said, uh, there's just a lot going on here. So, and they're just reiterating what they said in this original post. So, yeah, good page to read. Uh, what else? I think that was pretty much it. Yeah, go check out this video. It's way shorter than this video. But again, this is just all of my opinions that I'm just putting out there about this. Overall, oh, this is the old one. Overall, these sounds like some great changes. But again, I stress that, like, I really hope that at the end of the day, uh, this does not lead into a situation where they're going to be installing types of like call home things. I really hope they don't end up doing that. Um, so that in builds of Below the Stone, there isn't like something that requires internet connection or something like that. Like it probably won't, but it'll still be weird if it's like a call home thing, right? It would be probably a little bit concerning. Um, but I have no idea. I just really hope that that isn't happening. Who knows? Uh, but with that being said, we'll have to see. The best thing I can say at this point is we'll have to see what happens from this. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say on this. I'm going to leave it at that because this video is probably over an hour long by now. I have no idea. But yeah, if you have anything to say or anything, if you want to correct anything that I said, please go into the comments and correct me. And, if there's anything you want to say about anything that I said, please tell me in the comments because, I'm not going to watch all the videos that have been put out. Through this, I need to focus all on Below the Stone because there's a lot of people that are really excited and waiting for this game to come out. And I can't spend, too many hours on this. So yeah, thank you all for watching. And hopefully the next video on this channel is not going to be about, dealing with Unity BS. Hopefully it's something much more positive. Okay. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you at a point in the future.